Hello, my name is Maura Murray and I'm a Senior Lecturer in Special Educational Needs and Disabilities here in the School of Education in the University of Hertfordshire. And I'd like to share with you a taster seminar on creating an inclusive ethos within a classroom. We recommend core text for first year students, and the text that the presentation is based upon is called Inclusive Primary Teaching, a Critical Approach to Equality and Special Educational Needs and Disabilities by Gopal, Childerhouse and Sharp. Within that publication, several factors are identified as contributing to this area. It is the teacher themselves, individual pupils, but also pupils as a whole class and small groups within the class, the physical environment, that is the classroom and indeed the school, the curriculum and the resources. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at each one of those factors and consider them in more depth. So starting initially with the teacher, Gopal refers to the work of several other authors when thinking about the importance of the teacher in this aspect. So the work of Conway talks about the need to be aware of the knowledge, confidence, and attitude of teachers. And there's also some reference to the idea that teachers very much act as models in terms of their interaction between children with special needs for the rest of the class. But that is extended to suggest that it is not just about the interaction between the teacher and the child with individual needs or the group of children with additional needs. It's also that this acts as a model for all of the rest of the children who are observing the teacher and the staff, and that this can potentially impact on how the rest of the class develop their own attitudes and values and beliefs towards inclusion. Gopal also suggests that it's very important for teachers to take some time to reflect on their attitudes and values and beliefs and to become aware of them, because Glaser, for example, quoted in the book, talks about there not being an opportunity to pretend to believe in inclusion. And this is something that we might consider in the light of school policies and guidelines. How important is that inclusive practice is really something that the teacher believes in, and therefore the drive for it comes from within that rather than being created in response to a policy or to a set of guidelines. Glazard also then talks about what a classroom might look like when this sort of approach is achieved. So the idea is of children being able to be independent, being free and able and prepared to ask for help, and knowing that their work and that their questions are valued, and having a sense of creativity. Gopal also talks about that an inclusive teacher seeks to value and recognise feedback from parents and carers, recognising the wealth of information that comes from parents and carers, but also seeking to utilise the rest of the pupils in the class and colleagues and other professionals. So what I'm going to do with you now is I'm going to share a video. And this is something that we do in our seminars. And it's a way of exemplifying what ideas might actually look like in practice. And it also gives an opportunity for you as students to discuss with your tutor and with your fellow students what you see in the videos, but additionally talk about your own experiences of the particular topic, whether that's in a school or whether that's with siblings or wider work experiences. So the video we're looking at is from Advanced Training Materials, and it is called Supporting Specific Learning Difficulties in the Classroom. So going to move the session along to earlier on in the lesson. We are going to join the group and hear more about a particular pupil with special educational needs and the approach that the teacher is adopting.
Danielle is a child who is on the dyslexia spectrum, and because of her spelling needs in class and her phonic ability, and the fact that she goes out for intervention group support as well, means that we have put in place in class things like her coloured overlays, word banks on the wall, special word banks for Daniela with her whiteboard, and access to laptops at all times.
So we can see in this teacher a strong wealth of knowledge about this particular need, which is dyslexia. And we also can see a confidence in her approach.
We've given her strategies in order to be ready for when she moves on and when she leaves us. So what we've tried to do with Danny is to make sure that she has a partner she can talk her through her ideas with.
What type of house? Yeah, so it could be like a terrace or flat. Yeah. Got to put another question. No, we're not meant to do that.
So again, we can hear and see how the teacher has utilised the strategy of peer-to-peer working or buddies, and again, supporting an inclusive approach by acknowledging the contribution of other pupils to helping Danny to feel included within the classroom. And Danny is now going to go on and talk about that.
If we're all together, if you don't know a word, it's easy to talk to each other because we're all at the same level, and they're not going to be like, well, I know that word, because there's lots of different words that we all don't know and some of us do know, so it's easier.
I'm also really keen, in order to make children feel confident with writing, like Danny, that she doesn't have to feel as though she has to write everything down with them.
So this is a teacher that is also aware of other aspects beyond academic learning for children with an additional need. So she's aware of the need to support confidence and self-esteem.
So we've made ICT a resource for her in the classroom, and she presents her learning on the computer there, which is a benefit to her, because sometimes children, when they've typed it, it looks different, I think, to how when they write it, and it makes it clearer for them on the screen. And then they can sort of sort out where they need to change some of their phonics. They can read it back, they can press the space bar, so it's actually a physical response to press the space bar, so they've got spaces between the words. And I think once they've got spaces between the words, they can then look at individual word patterns and see where they're making the mistakes and what they need to do next.
Okay, so we are going to move on to another section of this particular lesson.
Wow, nemesis. What does that mean, Ants?
Enemy.
Good boy. I'm going to write up nemesis because that's a fantastic word. Main in them was for them to use that good language, like the word from Ants, which was nemesis, and put it into a sentence. So therefore raising profile of literacy and not accepting either a basic sentence. It was about asking children to evaluate their sentence and improve it at all times.
So we have a teacher here who is exemplifying very much the idea of high expectations for all children in her classroom, including those with additional needs. And we're about to see this now with one particular pupil called Gareth.
Gareth, who stood at the front of the whiteboard, he can get quite nervous, and sometimes he doesn't organise his thoughts clearly before he voices an answer.
Harry Potter's nemesis is Professor Snape and Voldemort, but his teacher is Dumbledore.
Fantastic. Right, he was able to guide the talking, he was looking at the whiteboard. The children in the classroom were telling Gareth what he needed to do to make his mistakes better, if you like, improve on his mistakes, and he was then marking his work in front of the whole class through their guidance.
So we can see again a teacher that was very aware of the learning needs of this particular pupil, and also bringing in the rest of the school, the rest of the class, to support in the learning of Gareth. So, moving on then to consider the pupils. So, sometimes there can be an idea in creating an inclusive approach that it's very much about working with individual children or working with small groups of children. But Gopal talks about the need to recognise the whole class as an inclusive environment, and that it is actually very important to foster an inclusive approach with all of the children rather than on particularly those with additional needs. So it is very much about learning alongside others and collaboration. And so it is about enabling children to foster their social skills, which is what Siraj talks about, and Mosley within this section in the core text, about how children need to develop this ability to interact with other children and other adults, and that the purpose that the teacher is trying to create in the classroom, across the whole of the class, is a sense of common purpose and a sense of mutual acceptance. So how might that be approached, for example? So there is discussion about the idea of strategies such as the use of circle time, where children might address issues such as friendships, conflict that might have arisen from issues in the playground, and positive feelings of happiness, and more difficult feelings of sadness or anger. And by doing this in an environment within the classroom that is based on trust, and where there are boundaries, as in circle time, then the children can feel safe. And that this, whilst not always immediately recognised as being part of inclusion, is about developing a whole class inclusive ethos. Because teachers are aiming to become inclusive, need to be aware that their class will be made up of a range of different groups, whether that's friendship groups or whether that's socio-economic groups, and children need to be given opportunities to develop their social skills, and through strategies such as circle time, that this is also a factor in creating an inclusive environment. So moving on to the third factor that has been identified, we'll have a look at the curriculum, what is taught and how it is taught within a classroom. We saw in the video earlier the teacher's knowledge of dyslexia and that sense of a personalised learning, and this is indeed very important. But recent research has also highlighted that sometimes, particularly with trainee teachers, there can be a strong emphasis on a need for some form of very specific pedagogy or teaching approach, a type magic bullet being sought. But research by people such as Norwich and Lewis in several of their papers, and by the Education Endowment Foundation in their recently published guidance reports on working with SEND children in schools, suggests that actually high quality teaching practice is at the foundation of good teaching with children with SEND. And so we can think about strategies that are mentioned, such as utilising things like more time for children with SEND, more assessment, more opportunities for revisiting concepts, and that it's not necessarily all about doing something completely different, but about ensuring that your core practice is of high quality. The final area that is mentioned in terms of bringing about a truly inclusive classroom is spending some time thinking about the physical environment. So what is happening in your classroom in terms of the grouping of your pupils? And we could see that Danny, for example, was at the front of her small group table so that the teacher could be aware of her responses as the lesson was developing. And other sorts of areas that are part of the physical environment include the displays around the classroom, and within that, visual cues. So once again, we're going to have a look at another video. And this is called the primary behaviour in ADHD in the mainstream classroom. And we're going to join this session where the teacher is taking us around her classroom and discussing the sorts of approaches that she used in terms of arranging the classroom to support the needs of the children within her group.
Experience with them has helped her to formulate a number of strategies that work with all her pupils and keep class disruption to a minimum.
I set up a visual timetable for all the children so that when they come in, you see a lot of the children will come up and look at the board, and they'll see the visual signs. They know how to follow it. The minute you change the format, that throws them, they become insecure, and then that's when you have difficulties with their learning.
So in the seminar, this would be an opportunity for us to stop the video and talk about these types of visual timetables that we've seen in the classrooms or in other environments. And we do indeed take the opportunity, because this is an education degree, to think about other contexts beyond schools. So we might talk about what happens in higher level colleges and indeed in the working environment, so that some of these strategies may be utilised with adult working as well. They would look different to what happens in the classroom, but the core principles would remain the same.
Down here I've put a little map on the table, and we've got literacy groups, maths groups and friendship groups on there, so the children can come in and just check, because often it's just that security of knowing where they are and what they should be doing. As you can see, this is just a display of the children's work, but we do it in such a way that it's not confusing. It's another thing with children on the autistic spectrum. They find clutter and things all put too closely together hard to separate.
So the teacher here is showing that she has awareness that displays aren't just all about celebrating children's work and giving information. There's also an awareness of being aware of the needs of the particular children in terms of needing stability in the display and reducing anxiety by having a display that remains up for quite a while.
I'd like to know it as their classroom. If you change it too much, then it's almost like starting a new year again. They've got to get used to where everything is. I'm going to take you over to this area, which is an area where our children with more particular needs can come and have a bit of space, a bit of quiet. So this is the area where they work with their INAs or they work with friends away from groups when they need to.
Okay. So we saw there in the video displays and visual cues and how the classroom had been arranged so that there were opportunities for different groups of pupils to work in different parts of the classroom. And this was all to support the needs of the children within the classroom. So we have now looked at the 4 different factors to have more of an idea of what is involved in inclusive practice. And we'll see that it is actually much more than just the simple interaction between the teacher and the particular pupils with individual needs. The resources that I've referred to are listed here in our references. I would like to say that if you are particularly interested in learning more about inclusion and special education and needs and disabilities, we would be delighted to welcome you to our new programme in education, and thank you very much.